Hey guys, so today's video is gonna be a little darker, haha, even though it's so bright right now. Yeah, obviously, okay, so we're gonna react to a video called Do All Suicide Survivors Think the Same? Um, this is by a YouTube channel called Jubilee. They do really cool videos. Check them out, please do, they're really good. I remember when I was in high school, I heard one of my classmates say, he just couldn't understand how a person could want to kill themselves, to commit suicide. He was just like, how is that possible? How could one get to that point where they would want to kill themselves? And that was interesting for me to hear because I always kind of, I don't know, maybe up until that point I always assumed that everybody, at least in one point in their life, kind of like gets there. But anyway, let's just get into it. Hit that hotline.
The media accurately portrays mental health and suicide. 3.
When they say the media today, I guess they mean all media. I was thinking movies and TV, fictional media. If it's fictional media, I think there have been some good movies and TV series where they're really blunt about it, which is how it should be. If they're talking about the media, like news media, I don't think that. I mean, I personally don't watch the mainstream media, like news, too much. So I'm not entirely sure. Like, do they accurately remind us that suicide rates are getting higher and higher? I don't know. I mean, I remember some people saying that a lot of gunshot deaths in the United States are suicides, and I'm not sure if the mainstream media covers that, but let's see what they
2,
think.
1,
Interesting.
I don't think it does all the time, especially because there's so many things that can happen with any sort of mental illness, which makes it then a problem when you're trying to explain it to someone because they think, oh, like in 13 Reasons Why, and it's not always like.
Okay, I was not thinking about 13 Reasons Why at all. So, does 13 Reasons Why. I mean, in the first season, it was kind of a surprise to everybody I think when she committed suicide. So then that can be pretty accurate. I don't know.
That.
Sometimes they romanticize suicide and depression in media, and it's kind of like a weird balancing act because there's some mental illnesses that are like seen as trendy or attractive, like anxiety or depression.
And like especially with Twitter and stuff like that, everybody's like talking about it, everybody's retweeting about it. It's not a trend. It's an actual issue that people live with every single day. The media doesn't portray like people like myself. I'm a black lesbian woman and I've dealt with depression for a very long time. I've had suicidal thoughts. I've attempted it. So for me to
So this is why I don't. I mean, I think most people my age don't really watch the mainstream media as much as the older generation, and I really value, independent media like this, like Jubilee, where she gets to say the mainstream media doesn't represent me accurately, and she gets to be on this platform to talk about her perspective.
not have that representation, it's kind of hard for me to relate to it.
Well, I think that the media, it doesn't portray it correctly, but I also think that they're on the way up. It's not good now, but it's getting better, I think.
my family understands why I wanted to end my life.
I want to say mostly no. I mean, if they understood why in the first place, I don't think they would get to the point of wanting to commit suicide. I think, yeah, if you're in a place of understanding with you and your family, you hopefully, yeah, well, I would imagine that that decreases the likelihood of one wanting to commit suicide. So,
Three, two, one.
The first time I attempted was in middle school, and that was kind of understandable for my mom and my sister, because at that time we were going through a really nasty divorce. So when that happened in middle school, they kind of understood that that's what led to it. And then 2 years ago, I was drugged and assaulted. And that morning after I'd been found, it was such a traumatic experience that my mom walked out and I was just leaning over the balcony. And I remember breaking down crying because
her
of the fact
mom
that
walked out? What?
morning after I'd been found, it was such a traumatic experience that my mom walked out and I was just leaning over the balcony. And I
What does that mean, her mom walked out?
remember breaking down crying because of the fact that I thought I was going to throw myself off. So I think I was fortunate enough to have a family that was very understanding of everything I was going through.
I feel like my family didn't really understand. A lot of people still don't know like what's happened in my past. I was assaulted and attempted, and I was roommates with my best friend. She didn't even know. No one knew. And so I was handling it all internally, and now that they kind of know more or less, like I just wish they would have talked to me. They would have asked questions, because I was in college just all alone, dealing with it by myself, and no one knew.
In my family, my parents are both immigrants. My mom was a refugee, so everyone in my family struggled with severe mental health and PTSD, and we just never spoke about it. I think the focus was make sure you assimilate, make sure you get a good job, make sure you're surviving, make sure people see you as, an American.
My family had a really hard time even understanding that I was struggling with mental health, because they thought I was doing so well in school and I have all these friends, I'm hanging out with them all the time. How could you have depression?
I mean, I just don't talk about it with my family. I mean, when I told my sisters that I was coming on here, they're like, oh, what's it about? I was like, oh, it's called Suicide Survivors. And they're like, wait, did you? I was like,
Wait, hold on.
when I told my sisters that I was coming on here, they're like, oh, what's it about? I was like, oh, it's called Suicide Survivors. And they're like, wait, did you? I was like,
I didn't actually want to die.
Oh my god, that's a heavy question. So, I'll just say that I've never attempted suicide before, but I've kind of had to deal with stuff of my own, I guess. And when you're at those really, really lows, it's yeah, I don't want to live anymore. Like it hurts to be alive, sort of thing. So it's yeah. So I'm curious to see what they.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, what? I mean, interesting. Okay.
Every time I go through a depressive stage, I just want someone to hold me back. And that's why I don't think I actually want to die. It's more like I want to live, but it's really hard to do that.
every moment that passed by, I was more and more ready to meet my maker. I saw it as the easiest way out. Go somewhere where no one can find me, and then I'll be all right. I don't know how I was found. Somehow, some way, my friend had a gut feeling, and then all of a sudden, cops were knocking on my window in my car.
I went above and beyond when I was trying to attempt Me and my sister, she was begging me to go to the doctor to tell someone, and I was very insistent, like, I don't want to. So in those moments, yeah, definitely, I did want to die, but it was only because I didn't know any other solution.
I definitely wanted to end it all at the moment that I was at. I was ready to end it, and I made sure that I was in a
Wait,
place
hold
where
on.
nobody.
Did I get the question wrong? Okay, my bad. I got the question wrong. Okay, I read that. I read the question wrong. I thought it was I did want to die. So yeah, their answers make sense. The way that they moved to strongly disagree. They wanted to end it. They wanted to end it. That makes more sense.
I was ready to end it, and I made sure that I was in a place where nobody could find me. Thinking back to when I was sitting in that creek and everything that was going on, I'm really happy that I got up and walked away. I had kind of an epiphany when I was down there and going in and out of consciousness that my life is valuable.
Oh, I hate this one so much. God. People who, talk about suicide and all that, they're always accused of, like, being selfish or whatever. It's like, maybe, yeah, but it's literally your life. When you're in that state, nobody else can fix these problems for you. And so, I don't know, for other people to say that you're selfish and yet nobody else is able to fix the problems for you. Obviously, in a perfect world, yeah, everybody can fix their own problems. You don't need to depend on anybody. You're independent, great. But when you're in that state, it's literally your life. So yeah, perhaps it's quote unquote selfish. But when you're in that state where you're alone and nobody else can sort of, do anything about your state, for other people to say you shouldn't commit suicide, that's selfish. I don't know. It's literally your life. Your life. Like, who's anyone else to say whether what you should or shouldn't or can or can't do with it? I don't know.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, so the guy who says strongly agree. I mean, I just said, yeah, quote unquote, it is quote unquote selfish, but that I think it's in this case kind of fine. Let's see what they say.
I think it is pretty selfish. It's a decision that you're making on your own. You're also not putting much consideration into your family members, your friends. And I think the effects of you killing yourself and leaving your friends and family behind could potentially lead to maybe one of them doing it. My mother, she was going through a divorce right around the time when I tried to kill myself. And she told me that she thought about it too, and that she wanted to, but she knew, like, when she saw me go through it, that she couldn't. Killing yourself could be selfish because of the other people that would be affected.
See, I get where you're coming from, but I also, for me, the first time I attempted, in my mind, that was going to be the option that would make things easier for my family. And even the second time, for me, it was what was going to make things easier because in my mind, my family didn't want somebody that had just been drugged and assaulted. Like, that's a huge burden to be carrying. And so I didn't want to place that burden that I was going to have to go through and the financial burden of that on my family.
But I mean, look at all of us. I mean, we all thought that was our option. We thought that was the way to go. And afterwards, we saw the benefits of actually surviving and not having to be dead.
And that's why I moved, is because I agree with everything that you said. And then I also agree with you about the family situation and about how thinking about your family and thinking about the people that love you. I recently just got reconnected with my biological father. If I would have ended my life at 16, that would have never happened. He would have found me and he would have got the horrible news like, oh yeah, your daughter committed suicide at 16. So that aspect of it does make me feel like, yes, that is selfish, because there are still people who I don't even know who love me.
I agree with you saying that suicide can be selfish because it's such a huge trauma to a lot of people, but for people going through that actual moment, what I felt most frustrated about was, okay, people don't want me to die. People want me to live, but I don't know how I'm going to live, because at that time, I didn't know if I could even start medical transition. And I know trans people in Korea are not even employed, so how am I even gonna get a job? I need some kind of support to continue living, but that was so hard to find.
I am a happy person. 3, 2, 1, go.
I think I once was like very unhappy and very dark on the inside, and I always portrayed being that friendly, outgoing person. Now I'm genuinely happy on the inside because I've worked so hard, equally as hard as I do on my physical fitness with my mental health. And being happy to me is feeling at one with yourself, which is sometimes just being alone, which is okay. And I feel like people make that like, oh, you're alone all the time, you're excluding yourself. No, it's not that. I'm taking that space for myself to get to be happy.
For me, I feel like happiness is a lot of pressure. Like, I don't want to measure myself on one emotion. I feel like there's the spectrum of different things you can feel. You can feel upset, you can feel happy, you can feel depressed. And for me, it's just, I don't need to be in a constant state of it. So I think when we talk about happiness, it gets confusing because I think generally we're just saying, are you okay? And to me, that's different.
It really saddens me that I am standing here because I know it will disappoint a lot of people around me because they all want happiness for me. And sometimes I feel like I need to be happy because I need to fulfill those people's wishes. But it's not actually that. It's supposed to be for my own sake.
Yeah, I get you.
And like it's also like every day I struggle with a lot of things, like being trans, being a non-US citizen who is trying to immigrate here, having family issues. So.
And it's okay to not be okay. Like,
Yeah,
don't feel like you have to be forced to be happy. It's okay.
And that's the thing, like if you would ask me a month ago, I would have been standing over there with you. It's such
Yeah.
a wave, but like the past week, it's been a good week for me. But I mean, a month ago, I would have been right over there.
It gets better. 3, 2, 1.
I think in terms of the statement, it gets better, there's kind of a little tagline that comes after it that's, but it does take time. You don't heal right away. Sometimes you're gonna be in that dark place and you have to write it out, and you just have to find that willpower inside yourself. And it's very hard sometimes.
I feel like something that I was told a lot growing up was that it doesn't get better and that life gets worse and all those things. Like, it totally gets better. Everyone was wrong. Take those risks, like have faith in your own abilities, like push yourself as far as you can go. That's what I've been doing for the last 3 years, and it gets better.
I feel like for me, I'm in a position of privilege because it did get better for me. I had access to resources. I had health insurance so I could see a therapist. I have a job, so I have financial stability. I don't think that everyone gets that. I don't think that everyone is dealt the same hand.
I'm on the side of agreement here. I think that time heals all. Earlier I said I wasn't happy, but compared to where I was when I tried to kill myself, tremendously improved. I'm not in that deep, dark state of mind, and I do want to live. I still struggle with it, but I don't want to die.
And I think that's all that matters. Our society is so adamant about, making it a point that, well, you have to get better quickly.
Instant gratification.
Right. You have to get better quickly, or you have to act like you're at least better quickly. And you don't. It's okay to act like you're not okay for that time being. But as long as you get out of it and get there and take your time and do what you need, that's all that matters.
Can I get a help?
I hope these people
Gets better, everyone.
start a WeChat or a WhatsApp
Big group hug.
so they can support each other. I remember when I was younger, I don't know, maybe high school or something, maybe a little bit after high school, that if there was an invention where, this hypothetical button that everybody around the world had access to, say everybody got it, had this button, and when you press this button, you just die. It's quick and painless. You just die. I think that the public may be surprised at how many people would press that button. Yeah, something to think about. And when I was thinking about this, I don't know, I guess when I was in a particularly low state, I had some pretty dark thoughts, and I was thinking maybe that would have been for the better, You would have had people who didn't, want to suffer, they would be able to end their suffering, and the only people on the planet would be people who really wanted to live, or people who didn't wanted to commit suicide. You'd be the only people left on the planet would be people that weren't wanting to commit suicide. And because all these people died all of a sudden, maybe the people left on Earth would be like, okay, we really need to work on this. But obviously that's not a perfect solution. The second thing I wanted to talk about was there's an author called Yuval Noah Harari, and he wrote at least three bestsellers. Sapiens, you might have heard of that one. That was, recommended by Obama and Bill Gates, if that means anything to you. And he wrote Homo Deus and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And I'll read a little couple of sentences that I found to be pretty profound. For the first time in human history, starvation kills fewer people than obesity. Plagues kill fewer people than old age, and violence kills fewer people than accidents. If you think we should go back to some pre-liberal golden age, please name the year in which humankind was in better shape than in the early 21st century. Today, and for the last few decades, more people commit suicide than are killed by violence. Crime, war, terrorism put together. Statistically speaking, you are now your own worst enemies. Maybe our main problem is the gap between our power and our wisdom. The power he's referencing is, we've been able to prevent a lot of quote unquote unnecessary deaths, like car accidents or with seatbelt, airbag, and stuff like that. And we've been able to, with vaccines, we've been able to prolong our life and fight disease, learn more about nutrition and things like that. So that's the power that he's referencing. But now a lot of our deaths are the result of ourselves, whether it's internal, I guess, is what he's saying. Like, one of the biggest problems now is kind of something that we have to solve about ourselves, right? So I recommend his books. I'm reading Sapiens right now, and I'm gonna read the rest eventually. And the second author that I wanted to talk about was a guy called Johann Hari. It's been known for decades that depression has three kinds of cause: biological, psychological, and social. They are all real. Yet most people are told a heavily biological story with a little side dish of psychology and virtually nothing about social causes. We need a correction. So the author is British, and so he's talking from the perspective of the West. But I do think that this applies to a lot of places outside of the West as well. But I do remember growing up in the West, and I would see movies and TV shows where, you know, Americans, for example, would always have like prescription medication for, oh, I have anxiety. Not that, you know, it's wrong or anything, but like it was so casual, like that everybody had, no, not everybody, but how it was so casual how people had prescription medication like in American movies. It was just a normal sort of thing. It's almost like M&Ms or yeah, M&Ms. Yeah, I totally agree with Johann Hari's analysis. Yuval Noah Harari talks a little bit about this in his first book, Sapiens, too, how like prior to the agricultural revolution, we worked a lot less. We only kind of worked when we had to. There wasn't this like it wasn't like you're gonna spend most of your life working, so to speak. You know, the whole 5 days a week. You know, in Asia, it's like 6-7 days a week. Um, like 8-hour days. In Asia, it's like 12 to 16 hours a day on average in Asia. So a lot of these, I believe, are societal and social causes. So anyway, I highly recommend his lectures and his books. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast. I'll have some links in the description below. This was pretty heavy, so I think I'll end it there. Last thing I want to say is, you know, you've all heard this before, but if you suspect anyone of having suicidal thoughts, maybe reach out. Let them know that, you know, maybe don't just do the, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? Maybe actually just tell them, hey, I'm getting the sense that you might hurt yourself, and maybe have a conversation with them. Some things that have helped me. Number one is traveling, whether that's leaving your state or your province or even the country. I highly recommend it because you leave the environment that is kind of causing your depression and whatnot, your situation. So I think that removing you from that environment entirely can be a great help and kind of shift your entire experience. Sometimes this kind of helps looking at your baby photos or like childhood photos. Sometimes that puts things into perspective. Maybe visit somewhere where you feel like revisiting. Like I revisited my two of my elementary schools a couple of times, and I actually talked to some of my elementary school teachers, my first grade teacher and my 7th grade teacher. Sometimes it's nice to go back and, you know, they kind of remind you of how you were before, if when things perhaps might have been better. And lastly, another thing that may or may not help is keep a journal, write things down, express yourself, or maybe even a sketchbook, draw, just vent and express yourself there. Maybe even do a video diary. I'm obviously not an expert, so obviously the next piece of advice I would give is to see an expert, a therapist, a counselor, psychologist, maybe even a psychiatrist. So yeah, I'll leave that there. And I hope that if anybody watching is like going through some crap, talk about it. So I really hope to see what you guys think about this one. So let me know in the comments, and maybe we can have a conversation down there. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Peace.